be recorded and will appear on the Council's website soon after. Members of the committee should leave their cameras on but switch off their microphones until they wish to speak. Officers should switch their microphones and cameras off until the convener brings you into the meeting. Those observing today's proceedings should have their cameras and microphones switched off at all times. If members or officers wish to address the committee, please press the raise your hand icon, which is located on the Teams toolbar, but remember to switch it off after the convener brings you in. I will now start the recording and undertake a roll call to identify those in attendance. Councillor Houghton, convener.
Here, present.
Councillor Crockett, subbing for Councillor Lane.
Present.
Councillor Lumsden, subbing for Councillor Bolton.
Present.
Councillor Cook.
Good afternoon.
Councillor Grant.
Present.
Councillor John.
Present.
Councillor McClellan.
Present.
Councillor Nicholl.
Yeah.
And Councillor Yule.
Present.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Masson. We'll now turn to the business on the agenda before us today, beginning with 1.1. There's no notifications of any urgent business and there's no matters to determine exempt. Can I have any declarations of interest, please? Not seeing any hands. Just give it a second pass. Fine. Nope. Fine. There are no deputations received. Mr. Masson, I invite you just on the minute here at 5.1. I believe you've got a slight update.
Yeah, thanks, convener. Just to clarify, there's a typo at Article 3 in the minute. It was the minute of the 11th of May, not the 24th of June is what I've got in the minute there. So I'll get that amended.
Thanks, Mr. Masson. Are there any questions? Are there any questions on the minute, or are we happy to agree?
Agreed.
Councillor Nicholl?
I've got my hand up.
Yeah,
Hopefully.
Councillor Nicholl, sure.
It was just a very brief point. I don't know if you want to take it just now or at the end. It was regarding the developer obligations. It was just to see if we had an update as to where we were, because obviously the time span has now elapsed. It was just for the committee to be updated. Page 9.
Yeah, I'll take Mr. White in on that query. Thanks, Councillor Nicholl.
Yeah, happy to say that we have received the payment. If you really want to go into much more detail, we'll probably need to go into private.
I'm happy to at the end of the meeting, we can create a space for us to do that. That's no problem at all. Content with that, Councillor Nicholl?
I'm content to go in at the end. I realise it's probably something that should be held in private. Thank you.
No problem at all. As there were no other hands, I'll take it. We're otherwise happy to agree the minute. Attention now turn to the committee business planner on page 15. Are there any questions on the planner, please? Seeing no hands, we're happy to agree the planner?
Yep.
Take that as agreed. Thank you. We're on 7.1. There's no notice of motions, and at 8.1 there is no referrals. That takes us to our substantive item at 9.1 on page 31, the Council Financial Performance Quarter 1. Is there any questions on this item? Seeing no hands raised, give it a second pass just to check. It's fine. As there are no questions, I have an amended motion that I'd ask to be circulated. Oh, Councillor Cook.
Yeah, sorry, convener, I was having difficulties there a wee bit. Yeah, I had a question on it's paragraph 3.6 on page 32, if I can find it. Sorry, give me just a second. Yeah, so there is, yeah, paragraph 3.6 mentions the council should look to consider the options to mitigate the risk in relation to developer obligations. I wonder if officers could tell us how we might do that.
Yep, Mr. Belford, ready to jump into action?
Yeah, thanks for that, convener. Just in relation to that, I think the actions are actually being taken at this moment. So there's a further report that the council instructed. I think I was just reflecting that in this report to say that there is a changing nature of developer obligations and the risks associated with that. So there's work ongoing at the moment, and a report will come back to committee in relation to any future possible actions.
Thanks for that.
Content. Thanks, Mr. Belford, and thanks, Councillor Cook. As there are no further questions, I'm not seeing any hands again. As I said, I've got an amended motion to the recommendations, which I'll ask to be circulated now. And if anyone has anything already, Mr. Masson.
Okay, Mrs. Balaban will get that emailed. In fact, she's brought it up on the screen, but it'll also be emailed.
Perfect. For the sake of just making life easier while it's going round, it's just a two-part motion. The first part is just dedicating some money to the putting up of banners using some of the common good surpluses, and the second part is around cleaning. I won't say any more because I'm not moving it just now. I'm just letting people see it. Give people a couple of minutes, say 2-3 minutes, just to quick look at that. Thanks. Are you happy to agree? Oh, sorry, Councillor Yule, apologies.
Thanks, convener. It was just simply to ask if you could, or you or somebody else could explain, in relation to the £40,000 for banners from the existing city growth budgets, which part of the city growth budget will that be met from, and what will be impacted on? What will that impact on as a result? Because we appreciate budgets are very tight. And in relation to the £100,000 for washing pavements, which I think is an excellent idea, I'm sure the answer is that it is, but could somebody please confirm that that is a suitable use of common good fund resources?
I'll invite Mr. Sweetnam on the first part and then Mr. Belford on the second.
Thanks, convener and Councillor Yule. So within the city growth budget, we have allocations for promotion of the city and also some events, as well as our regular museums and art galleries budget. It's fair to say that as a result of COVID, there has been an inability to deliver some of these activities, and therefore there would be room within the existing budgets to support this new initiative up to a maximum of £40,000. So given the fact that some of the activity hasn't proceeded, I don't anticipate it's at the expense of or would impact negatively on city growth activity in the remainder of the year.
Thanks, Mr. Sweetnam. Mr. Belford, just on the common good aspect, if you could.
Thanks, convener. And in relation to the common good, yes, we're satisfied that this is applicable expenditure that can be applied to the common good.
Thanks, Mr. Belford. Councillor Yule, does that satisfy your questions?
Thank you to both Mr. Sweetnam and Mr. Belford for their very helpful answers.
Perfect. Councillor Nicholl, followed by Councillor McAllen.
Thank you very much, convener. Following on from Councillor Yule's questions, can Mr. Sweetnam maybe tell us what do we get first of all for the £40,000? You know, how many banners or whatever are we buying or proposing to buy? And can you also give us some flesh on the bones of what we get for £100,000 of common good money for street cleaning and such like? I wonder if you can just give us a little bit more detail in around what we're getting for the spend.
That's fine. I'll invite Mr. Sweetnam to answer the first part, and then I'll have someone for you for the second. Thanks.
Yes, thank you, convener and Councillor Nicholl. I'll deal with the first part. So I just highlight again that it's up to a maximum of £40,000, and the number of banners, we would be using the existing infrastructure from both sides of Union Street. I don't have the exact number to hand because we're still in discussions with the existing supplier. However, it does cover, as you would expect, some of the art gallery exhibitions, Provost Skeens House, the Events 365 activity, and wider city centre activity, being delivered, for example, new art. So the intention is to use the existing infrastructure across Union Street and to put these new banners up, but the exact number I don't have to hand.
Convener, if I may, a sort of follow-up to that. It's maybe my memory playing tricks on me, but I thought some of these things had banners already. So this is new banners. Is that correct,
Mr. Sweetnam?
So sorry, Convener. Yes, it's so. For example, members will recall around things like offshore Europe. We've got Welcome to Offshore Europe, or at Christmas we use some of this infrastructure. So it's new banners for that existing infrastructure. But yes, they would be new and not time-bound in relation to a specific event. It's promoting footfall in and around the city centre.
Okay.
Thanks, Mr. Sweetnam.
My sort of last sort of point that I have in my head regarding the £40,000 and perhaps for the 100,000, do we normally require a business case for that type of spend, or is that within?
Mr. Sweetnam.
It's within the council approved budget for promotion of the city, and we also have an existing contract with a supplier in terms of the banners. So from that point of view, I don't anticipate it needs a separate business case.
Thanks, Mr. Sweetnam.
What about the £100,000?
Yes.
Does that require a business case?
Convener, just on
Mr. Welford,
in relation to that, Mr. White may well support this too, but I think a lot of the work that we're looking to do, driven from an in-house team perspective, in order to facilitate the cleaning, the change, the difference that we can make in the city centre in relation to the £100,000. Wasn't looking for that to have a specific business case in its own right. I think there's historic good work that's been done in relation to city centre deep cleans and so on that actually make it something that's proved to be a worthy aspect of our work in the past. Don't know if Mr. White wants to add anything to that.
Mr. White?
No, I mean, this is just an acceleration of routine maintenance to give the city centre a bit of a deep clean. Obviously, with the seagulls and what have you, the pavements could do with a bit of a clean as people come back out with social distancing rules being relaxed. So it was just to try and give the kind of freshen up of the city centre. So it's that kind of routine maintenance, and we wouldn't ordinarily take a business case for routine maintenance.
So my intention in this is it's an intensification of resource that we're spending on practices that we currently do, as opposed to a new kind of area of work. Does that satisfy your questions, Councillor Nicholl?
Yes, I wonder if somebody could maybe answer my questions on the £100,000.
I'll invite Mr. Riley.
What are we getting for the £100,000?
Sure, I'll invite Mr. Riley to maybe expand on it. I have put in some of the specifics in the second part, but if Mr. Riley is able to elaborate a little bit further, perhaps.
Yes. Afternoon, Councillor Nicholl.
How are we doing?
Through convener. Yeah, we're looking at jet washing the pavements throughout the main city centre. That'd be Broad Street, up Union Street, Market Street, and sort of like the immediate city centre. Through jet washing, we'll be also removing any weeds that are hanging about left in those pavements, so we'll be clearing those away. We're looking at going round and tidying up round bollards, doing a bit of painting certain railings which have black paint on there, looking at clearing up any graffiti, removing any unwanted fly wash, looking at some specialist repair on railings where that also might be needed, going through the empty shop doorways, cleaning, tidying those, having a look at washing down some of the railings, bollards, benches and other street furniture, and doing general maintenance to some of the street furniture that's there. And just try and lift the whole of the town centre up, doing that, and just going through and seeing what needs to be done additional, and where it needs to be done is to action that until we've actually gone through the 100,000. So that's the estimate. So we'll be starting at one end, Broad Street, and working all the way through.
Thanks, Mr. Riley. Councillor Nicholl.
Thank you. And is this going to continue for the rest of the financial year? Because you were saying there until the money runs out. I wonder if you could just flesh out, Mr. Riley, are we doing, a weekly clean, on a Sunday morning or something like that, or are we just going to be doing this work just to provide a little bit of detail in around, how long this £100,000 would hopefully last? Because I think we can all agree that the seagull guano and things is something we would like to see less of underfoot. Never mind the other things that sometimes appear. Yeah,
I agree. But the intention is to put the additional resources in that we got and intensify that work in the city centre, starting towards the end of this week, if this motion goes through today, and do it over the next few weeks. So it won't be every week we'll have one team just going in and doing something. It'll be the resources going in and doing a hit throughout the city centre, all in one go over the next few weeks. And that could be 6 or 7 weeks.
Thanks, Mr. Riley. Councillor Nicholl.
Okay.
No, that's fine. Thank you very much, and thank you for your indulgence, convener. I obviously had a few questions as it unwound. Thank you very much.
No problem. I think Councillor McClellan, followed by Councillor Yule, followed by Councillor Lumsden. Thanks.
Thank you, convener. Some of the points have been touched on, but I'll just go through the questions I jotted down. And just for Mr. Sweetnam, in terms of the banners, are they just so I'm totally clear? Is it sort of temporary banners, for the single use sort of for the events and the like, or is it an electronic banner? Or
apologies. Hold on, Mr. Sweetnam. If you just want to rattle off your couple of questions, and then that'll give officers time to think of as well, and then we can get through them, Councillor McClellan.
Okay, no problem, convener. So and also in terms of the cleaning, can we just have sort of assurances that it will only be ACC property, whether it's roads or the like, that we are cleaning, given it's common good funds? And it was just a final point in terms of what Mr. Riley had been saying at the end there about starting next week. It was just to also sort of seek the assurance that we do have the staff resource to just to up it to that level as described straight away, or are we going to have to get contractors in to do it? Or it was just to get an idea how it was going to be carried out. But those three just
Thanks.
Now.
Perfect. I'll take Mr. Sweetnam, and then I'll take Mr. Riley, and perhaps Mr. Belford if needed. Thanks.
So thank you, convener. And yeah, so the banners are temporary in the sense that that they'll be there to promote some of the activities that are happening in the city, but they won't be time bound in terms of pinning, specifying a particular date of an event, for example. But they are being designed so that they can stay up there. But whether inevitably they wouldn't be there permanently as other events and need for those for those street banner infrastructure becomes apparent. So, for example, when Offshore Europe returns to the city, I would anticipate they could be replaced by specific banners promoting that event, for example. But they are physical and it's not a digital banner as such.
Thanks, Mr. Sweetnam. And then Mr. Riley, just on, I think Councillor McKellen was just looking for clarity in terms of what was specifically being cleaned. I imagine it would just be as we have done in the past in terms of general street cleaning.
Yeah, the cleaning will be general street cleaning, so we'll be just working from one end of the city centre to the other, doing footpaths and pavements, any steps, etc.
And that's all common areas, isn't it? Public areas.
Common areas, yeah, all common areas. With regard to the resources, we'll be looking at primarily using our employees for the city centre, but backfilling potentially with some agency. Some of the painting, we're looking at how we can actually source painters. I don't want to impact too much on building services by pulling painters off other work. So we're having consideration of that at the moment, how best we can do that. And it may be I might have to bring in some agency or contract painters. But if we can, we will try and source it from our own staff to do the painting.
Thanks, Mr. Riley. Councillor McClellan, how does that sit with you?
Thanks, convener. Yeah, no, just to touch on Mr. Sweetnam's point, in terms of the banners, I do appreciate the usefulness of banners to direct people to the attractions in the city, such as, you know, the art gallery and the like. Just so they will be sort of more permanent than sort of single event advertising. It will obviously sort of stand a sort of a couple of months, perhaps. Just
Mr. Sweetnam.
Absolutely, Councillor McClellan, and you know, recognising one has to be cognizant of the messaging, and it's to raise awareness of some of these exhibitions, events, but also, for example, the reopening of Provost Skeens House. So from that point of view, their shelf life will be longer, and the objective of the messaging is just to, as I say, raise awareness and ultimately just ensure that you know, we're trying to incentivize as much activity in the city centre as possible through our existing investments in terms of the tourism assets in the city.
Thanks, Mr. Sweetnam. Councillor McClellan.
Thank you. So, just what can you give me an example of some of the events and sort of what would be the furthest away event perhaps that we would advertise? You know, this year. I assume it'll be this year.
If I haven't been clear, I don't. These aren't directional banners in terms of how to get to an exhibition or an event, but in terms of so I would imagine with the Tour of Britain coming to the city in September, I would imagine there'd be you know, a depiction, a promotion of that. Provost Skeens House, I've mentioned the ongoing, we've got the British Art Show, the Zandra Rhodes exhibitions coming to Aberdeen Art Gallery, the Maritime Museum is reopening imminently. So these are the types of messages that we're trying to convey to people in the city, be it residents and visitors.
Yeah, no,
Thanks,
thank you, convener. Just events and exhibitions are normally sort of a week or a couple of weeks or like. It was just whether we're going to have, you know, whether they'll be quite specific, outlining the museum is here or art galleries here, compared to you know, there is an X exhibition on the, you know, end of August or something.
Well, I think in order to derive as much value, we're trying to not have specific dates, and these would be time bound, and then they have to come back down. So there is a balance to be sought there. Yes.
Okay. Grand. Thanks, convener.
Perfect. Thanks, Councillor McClellan. Councillor Yule, followed by Councillor Lumsden.
Thanks again, convener. As I said earlier, I think they're both very sensible ideas. But can I just, for clarity's sake, I've got a question for Mr. White and Mr. Riley, then a separate issue for Mr. Sweetnam. It might be best if I ask them separately. But for Mr. White and Mr. Riley, Mr. White told us this was an acceleration of routine maintenance. In which case the question would be, why does it need additional resources if we're just accelerating something that was planned anyway? Mr. Riley told us it was extra work requiring additional resources. Now, I have no objection to the additional resources being proposed, but the question would be, is it routine maintenance that's simply being speeded up?
I'll take.
Is it?
No,
is it extra
I'll
work?
take Mr. White in on that question. I'll come back to you, Councillor Neat.
Yeah, apologies, convener. I was trying to sort of refer the work as being, this isn't something that we've never done before. This is something that we have done in the past. So it's a routine in that respect is how I actually meant it. So apologies if I've caused confusion there.
Mr.
Mr.
White never causes confusion. He always brings sanity to any conversation. Thanks, Mr. White. In relation to the 40,000 for banners, as I'm sure you know, convener, these sort of banners have been regularly put up by the council over the years, and I would have assumed that, you know, given that the budget exists and it's within Mr. Sweetnam's delegated powers to use that budget for the purpose to which it was allocated, the question is to Mr. Sweetnam, why weren't you planning to do this as a matter of course? Or if you were, why is it here today? Since it was, you could have made that decision yourself. And if you weren't planning to do so, I would again ask, why not?
Thanks, Mr. Sweetnam. You're on mute, Mr. Sweetnam.
My apologies, convener and committee. Yeah, I think the pre-COVID, the overall activity to promote the city, we would have had specific annual events in mind. So, for example, Offshore Europe in September every second year, that would take up some of this space on the banners, or indeed Christmas and so forth. So that the intention now is to react to the fact that some of these planned events aren't happening, and to just maximize the opportunity of the fact that this infrastructure exists, and we're just putting up new banners around some of the activities that are coming on stream, and perhaps with more certainty as we emerge from lockdown. So it's only been in the last couple of weeks that you know, the Tour of Britain is definitely coming in September. The gallery has been sort of closed and then opened. So we've reacted to the changing circumstances as the physical distancing rules change and as the cities come out of lockdown.
Councillor Yule?
Yeah, thanks. I'm now further confused, because Mr. Sweetnam's told us that we've reacted, and if it was a case of officers reacting, I would have expected a proposal from officers. What we have is a proposal from the convener. Now, who it came from is, you could argue, is neither here nor there, but there is an important point there. If this is an initiative that Mr. Sweetnam is proposing, I'm happy to support it, but I think we should be told that.
Councillor Yule, I thought you'd be happy to support my proposal anyway, if it was coming from me, or
absolutely, a good idea is a good idea, convener.
If it's happy to give clarity. So naturally, conveners would discuss matters inside their, you know, within their different services and stuff with their officers throughout, and this is obviously an opportunity with, you know, arriving at this committee, and I decided to bring forward a motion to encapsulate that, joined up with street cleaning, because we all live in the city, we all know, you know, what people's concerns are, and the city centre is absolutely one of them. So, you know, having asked for proposals and ideas, I'm reacting to that. I hope that provides the clarity you're looking for.
Thank you. That assures me that what you're proposing is Mr. Sweetnam's excellent idea. So thank you very much, convener, and Mr. Sweetnam.
Thanks. I have Councillor Lumsden, and then I believe Councillor Nicola again for another question.
Thank you, convener. It was really just Councillor Nicola had asked a question. I don't think it was answered, and that was just whether this was an eligible use of common good funds. So it was just to hear from officers that they do agree that common good money could be used for what's proposed.
Mr. Belford?
Yes, convener. I think I did confirm that was the case earlier, but for clarity, yes, this is relevant and appropriate expenditure.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Belford, and apologies if I missed it first time.
No problem. Councillor Lumsden, thank you, Mr. Belford, and Councillor Nicola, I believe you're last for questions.
Thank you very much. I think it was Councillor Yule's question, but there you go. Just a final question. Can officers perhaps remind me what did we previously budget for the deep cleaning of Union Street? I remember seeing papers about it, but I can't remember the figure. Just for my information, please.
Mr. Riley, do you have those figures to hand?
Yes, I think Councillor Nichols is referring to work which was done some years ago pre-COVID with regard to the city centre master plan, and there was a hit squad which used to go around the city, and that was a revenue budget that sat within the city centre master plan. And when that initiative came to an end, that was when the hit squad finished. I think the total cost of having a small team going around the city centre for a year was somewhere in the region of 160,000, but that was just having a dedicated small squad that did a number of things and went round the city time and time again throughout the year.
Thanks, Mr. Riley, and certainly just to re-emphasise.
Yeah, that's my memory of it. Sorry.
No problem, Mr. Riley. I appreciate my microphone sometimes a bit quiet. Just to say, obviously, that the intention this time, my intention in the motion is that we have a shorter period, kind of intensification of efforts to get the city centre sorted. Does that satisfy your question, Councillor Nicholl?
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Nicholl. Thanks, officers, as well, for your lengthy answers. Committee, are we happy to agree the Councillor McClellan?
Thanks, convener. Apologies, you were ready to move on there. Just a final question for Mr. Riley. It was just to ask, including in this, could you perhaps also, with the cleaning of the statues in the city centre, also perhaps be a feature within that, given they are in the city centre and they do often, I'm sure Councillor Houghton will agree, often get, covered in mess. That would be, would that be something we could perhaps look at as well?
My understanding is that that requires very specialist and, to be frank, expensive teams to do that, sometimes external, but I'll ask Mr. Riley.
Thank you, convener. Yes, we have to be very careful with the statues. We can give it consideration, but it is specialist cleaning, and I don't want to cause any damage if we just go and steam clean a statue. So, but we can have a look and see if there are things that can be done, if there's anything obvious.
Brilliant, thank you. Thanks for that, convener, as well.
Thanks, Councillor McClellan. No, I think it's a good point. I mean, if there is even some light work that can be done just to touch them up a bit, I think we'd all welcome that. Colleagues, are we happy to agree the amended recommendations?
Agreed.
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. In that case, apologies. Well, now what I'll do, that was the last item we had today. I'll now end the meeting here, and what I'll ask is